First of all, I'd like to thank the staff of the conference and, of course, Russell for his work as chair. For me, it's fantastic being here also because it's my first time in this incredible country that is so long from mine. In my dissertation, I'm going to present two studies on cyber victimization we have done in Criminal Research Center for Crime Prevention. In both studies, we analyze the victimization in cyberspace using the routine activities approach. And both are part of a national research project financed by the Spanish Ministry of Economy and Competitiveness. It's incredible that in Spain we still have little financiation for projects, not a lot. That is called Cybercrime Determination of Risk of Victimization for Designing Strategies of Criminological Prevention. Well, as you know, there are previous very interesting studies about cyber victimization and routine activities. However, generally these studies have focused on descriptive analysis of victimization in specific cybercrimes, normally to identify the risk factors associated with them. We can see here Markham that says that share personal information or to buy in the internet, to use instant messaging are risk factors. Choice to use antivirus, to download files, the hours you spend on the internet, pattern not set to open links, to use security software. Well, our intention instead during this work that we began 3 or I think 4 years ago with the invaluable help of Professor Marcus Felson also, was to apply routine activities theory to this new place of social communication, this is the cyberspace, to create a model that could explain what makes a target suitable in cyberspace. So the two premises from which we part in our study are, first of all, a very simple idea, the idea that cyberspace is different from physical space, and the way that the motivated offender and the suitable target and the capable guardians, the managers relate to one another are different too. If we understand this, if we understand how happens this, we can improve cybercrime prevention. Second, that if we compare perceived cyber victimization with cyber routine activities, we can identify risk factors for the victimization of each crime, but not only that, we can build a general predictive model of victimization in cyberspace. That's what we are trying to do. With this intention, and because we had the primary hypothesis that we were going to have some differences in the victimization results in adults and in teenagers, we prepared two surveys, one with adults and the other with teenage population. The second one, I have to say that started 6 months ago, and therefore we're still analyzing the data. So in this presentation, I will show only the results of victimization of both studies, prevalence of both studies, but only the predictive models of social and economic cyber victimization from the first one. In the first study, we have obtained a representative sample of the Spanish population aged 18 to 65 who use the internet at least 8 hours per week with a telephone survey with CATI system. In the second one, we have obtained a sample of 1,000 students aged 12 to 18 years in 12 different schools in 10 different cities. We are trying now to make it 2,000 in next months. In both studies, the dependent variables were two, economic and social victimization, I will explain later that, and the independent variables, as we will see deeper later, are related to routine activities, a theory of routine activities in cyberspace, specific theory of routine activities in cyberspace. Well, let's see first the results of prevalence. As we can see, the results are that 87.2% of users between 18 and 65 years has suffered at least one cyber attack. At the same for the 86.6% of users between 12 and 18 years. You can see that victimization percentages are very similar in both samples. Well, victimization rates seems too high, but keep in mind that we are measuring not only fraud, but we are measuring also other cyber attacks that are part of the fraud's attempt, like hacking, like malware infection, that is going to be the most prevalent, or to receive a scam or spoofing emails. We can see the perceived economic victimization rate for adults is 86.6% and 79.9% for young people. Most prevalent economic victimization is malware infection. We can see here that is 75.2%. That is a very common rate in other studies, 70 to 80%. And we can see also second, to receive a scam. There are studies that say that is more than that. Spam phishing, 43.5%. If we talk about lost files, we can see that it's only 24.4%, 32% in young people. And if we are speaking about to lose money, when the fraud is not an attempt, is consumed, we have a 6.6% in adults and 3.9% in in young people. In contrast, as we hypothesized previously, teenagers suffer more social cybercrimes than adults. There is a very big difference in this item, as you can see, 20% of adults and almost 50% of teenagers. And this difference, of course, comes from the victimization of harassment. We don't have done the whole analysis, but one can hypothesize that this difference can be explained because it is young people who more use of the ITCs as a social network do. And this maybe can explain also the big difference between victimization of adults and teenagers related to sexual harassment. 3 times more when the victim of the harassed is a teenager. Sorry. The more suffered harassment attacks are personal spoofing, false accusation, threats, repeatedly unwanted contact, to post personal information, that is the most experienced by adults, and coercion. In sexual harassment behaviors, most often repeated, are feeling harassed by receiving sexual messages. We can see that is 4.8% in teenagers compared with 1.8% of adults, followed by feeling obliged to send pictures with sexual content and being forced to perform sexual behaviors through the webcam. Well, once we have seen the results of prevalence, let's remember that we part from a premise, the second one, according to which if we compare perceived cyber victimization with cyber routine activities, we can try to build a general predictive model of victimization in cyberspace. Well, we part from the idea, very simple idea, that of course in cyberspace, of course in a cybercrime, there must be a motivated offender, suitable target, and the absence of a capable warden. What we are especially interested of is in what makes a target suitable in cyberspace. The thing is, if what makes a target suitable in physical space is the same what makes it in cyberspace. Well, we have the acronym CRAVED from Clark, you can remember. We also have from Cohen and Felson this acronym VIVA. One target is suitable, it depends in its value, inertia, visibility, and accessibility. The question is if it's the same in cyberspace. We can have the intuition that that is not going to work the same. If we think in what means inertia, in what means accessibility when Clark and Felson were trying to explain what it means, doesn't work the same in cyberspace. What we are trying to do is to change that acronym for one that worked in cyberspace and try to modelize if that is correct with the help with Professor Marcus Felson. Well, in the time I have now, I have to say that it's impossible for me to explain all the ideas I expressed before in a theoretical work about how changes opportunity field in cyberspace. I will try to resume that ideas saying that for being suitable in cyberspace, for being suitable, a target must be first of all introduced, must be not protected, and the owner has to interact to be visible. And I will explain a little bit this. First of all, in cyberspace, only is possible to attack some personal or economic goods if them are introduced inside the cyberspace. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, is the own future victim who introduced it without knowing. The thing is, in physical space, I am in contact with the victim, and me as motivated offender is going to be who select the good that I'm going to damage. I can select all that the victim is. In cyberspace is different, because in cyberspace, as we can see, the victim enters, also the offender enters, but only a representation, and sometimes I can keep some things outside the cyberspace. So the first idea is that things like having personal photos in the computer which connects to the internet, having real or economic or personal data in the computer, etc., suppose an introduction that maybe increases likelihood of being victimized. That is the first topic, introduction. Second one, self-protection. The idea is that there are some computer systems in cyberspace that some authors have worked about that idea in capable guardian. I think that that's not the place. It's not a question of capable guardian, it's a question of the own victim who is going to be less of self-protected. I will explain it, not the way I want it. But the idea is that there are some computer systems in cyberspace that are better self-protected than others, because they use some self-protection software like antiviruses, firewalls, and others that make them less suitable. The offender, sometimes not the person, sometimes it's the proper virus that he designed thinking in vulnerabilities, will select always the less protected one. So the second idea is that less self-protection, more likelihood of victimization. And finally, for being suitable in physical space and in cyberspace, of course, a target must be invisible. But what makes visible a target in cyberspace? In cyberspace, there are millions of targets. Which one is visible? Is one the one who moves, the one who interacts with others, the one who makes more actions that make him more visible. So the idea is that the more you interact, the more you are visible. So this is very simple, and it's very difficult to explain it in not so much time. But the three hypotheses that we propose for our study are these. First, more interaction with other users in cyberspace, more cyber victimization. The less self-protection increases likelihood of cyber victimization. And third, more introduction in cyberspace increases likelihood of cyber victimization. With that hypothesis, we can see that here, we prepared a survey with a sample of 600 subjects using internet more than 8 hours a week. 56% are women and 44% men. Age ranges, as I said before, from 18 to 65. Mean age is at 40.21 years. We have two dependent variables. Economic cyber victimization created from these victimization variables. Spam phishing by fraud, malware and delayed files for malware infection. This variable is dichotomous. victim if you have been victim of one cybercrime, and not victim if not. Social cyber victimization was created from the victimization in two variables: harassment victimization and sexual harassment victimization. We will analyze here only the results of the harassment victimization. We built 5 independent variables. The first were the 3 variables we built in this construct that I called interaction. First one, we have done a deconstruction in 3 constructs. That first of all is personal interaction, that actions taken by person in cyberspace to communicate with other people. We build it with 9 variables, such as the use of email, instant messaging, social networks, and so on. Numeric variables can score from 0 to 9. Second is interaction with strangers, that are the actions taken by a person in cyberspace to communicate with strangers. We build it, as you can see, with these 5 variables: contact websites, contact angles using social networks, contact strangers by instant messages, and so on. And the third is bank interaction, making economic movements, shopping or banking. Similarly, we built the variables no self-protection, not using antivirus, no use pirate software, not to change the password, and so on. And finally, introduction, a construct built with all the actions in which the agent moves data from physical to virtual space, having pictures, videos, or passwords on the computer that you connect to the internet, facilitate personal info via networks, social networks, and so on. With these variables, we created 2 predictive models of cyber victimization. One for economic cybercrime, the other for harassment cybercrimes. For that, we have made a binary logistic regression with the enter method. First, we have the bivariate analysis to see if there is a relationship between between independent variables with independent ones. In the model of social cyber victimization have been introduced variables: interaction with strangers, personal interaction, introduction, and self-protection. In the model of economic cyber victimization has also been introduced the variable banking interaction. In the social cyber victimization model, the variables introduced explain between 10 and 15% of the variance, and in the economic victimization model between 15.7% and 21.3% of the variance, with a rate of correct classification for victims in both models from 79%. All variables introduced in the model of harassment are significant predictors of victimization, so that interaction in the cyberspace, we can say that the more interaction, the risk probability increases by 63.3%. The more interaction with strangers increases probability of risk in 55.04%, introduction in 72.3%, and 63.3% no self-protection. In the model of economic victimization, the variables that are included in the model are personal interaction, interaction with strangers, logically bank interaction, and non-self-protection. Interaction with strangers increases likelihood of risk in 70.8%, no self-protection 65.9%, bank interaction 62.03%, and personal interaction 57.4%. If you have questions about that, I can explain, for example, why it doesn't work, introduction, and so on. Because we are arriving now to the conclusions. This is a model that is working. Some things are very logic, but some other things show that the variables like personal interaction is very important, not only in social victimization, but also is very important in economic victimization. So, the conclusions, first of all, again, the simple idea, but I think we have to think more about this idea that cyberspace is different than physical space, and the way that offenders, targets, guardians, and managers relate one to each other is different too. Second, for cybercrime prevention, we have forgotten the significant importance of the victim. Maybe the criminologists have not forgotten, but the people that is managing with the security of information, they have forgotten totally. The victim decides what is inside, how to be protected, and how visible it is. Third, introduction in cyberspace of personal photos and other personal data, interaction with others and especially with strangers, and the low self-protection increases risk of cyber harassment. Fourth, the user defines likelihood to be a victim also of economic cybercrime, interacting with bank transactions and other economic activities. Maybe that is very obvious, but also interacting with other people, of strangers, and not using the different possibilities of self-protection. So, last conclusion, it's necessary to educate more, and especially it's necessary to involve internet provide servers, to involve web pages and other social agents in cyberspace to understand that it's easy to make more difficult a cybercrime, being potential victims less suitable. Thanks for all of your attention. And I will try to answer the questions. Thank you.